Rekha Govindan Kurup. Diane was Rekha's chair, and I was her committee member, and we loved it. Her thesis is called Rising Daughter, Silent Mother, and Fading Grandmothers, a study of female sexuality within a North Malabar Nayar family structure.
Wow. Awesome. Rekha, radiant being, reflecting the light of the divine in abundance. Gentle and strong, she knows who she is and asks no one else to tell her. Full of joy and compassion, she embodies trust and hope and beauty. Wide awake, she reveals truths unseen by those who sleep.
Wow. Thank you everyone for being here. Thank you to my co-hosts for all here, my mom, all my professors, and before I begin, I would just like to remember and offer grace to all my ancestors, my Guru, His Holiness Sri Sri Ravi Shankar, and Goddess Durga. So this has been one of the most amazing journeys of my life. I never thought I'm going to get emotional, but it looks like I am. I'm an emotional creature. I came to this program September of 2010, when my life had really taken on a very different shape. And everything that I knew of being a woman in society, religious do's and don'ts, dogmas, shoulds and should nots, everything was challenged. Everything as I knew it did not make sense anymore. And that's when one of my very close friends, Ariel Warner, who did her PhD here, she asked me, we met a friend of hers, her name is Valerie Sher, another person who is a faculty here too, and she recommended, why don't you just go to the website of ITP and check out the Women's Spirituality program. And I just read the first line, which kind of says, if you're at the crossroads of your life. And it just felt that that was me, right there. And I thought I wanted to come to the program, and Judy was the first person I met who interviewed me, and Judy and Diane, they both have done a lot of work in the indigenous culture which I come from in India. It's called as the Neiers, from Kerala of India. And Judy was just telling me about it, and very, very happy that I was joining the program. But in my mind, I was thinking, well, I'm not coming here to know anything about my culture. I was like, yeah, it's great. I'm so honored to be here. That made me very safe coming here. But no, I'm not here to know anything about my heritage. I just here to know who I am. We all know when you think like that, that's it. Very interesting for me in the program. From the very first day that I came to the program, somehow in every class that I pulled from was my ancestry. From my Nayar roots, from the very beginning, every memories, and I'm like, where are these memories coming from? I've never remembered them like that. And every paper that I wrote about my ancestry, my grandmother, my mother, my memories of growing up in Kerala, and my connection, which was always there from my land, it got really revived. And through that journey, so much happened to me in the last 2.5 years that I'm not the same person that I am standing before you. And all my friends who are here in this room can vouch for that. Many of them have seen me through this change. And so I'm going to go a little through the formal presentation because I've done a lot of work for this. So I'm going to really share, and it's very interesting work in the sense of, it's very personal. it just involves not just me, but involves my mom, who's actually here from India for this thesis, and grandmothers from my culture. So, and you can see my chair is Diane and Vicky, they both are here. And the research method that I used is organic inquiry. I don't know how many of you are familiar with that methodology. Those are in the program, definitely are. It's a transpersonal research methodology, and what makes it so beautiful is that there are not many methodologies which can capture the essence of spirituality, which is not linear, which is very unpredictable. And this, as the word itself says, organic. You never know where your next moment takes you, and that's what this journey made it so beautiful. My whole method was, it was not just research, it was my life. And that's how it impacted me. So before I begin, I just want to define female sexuality, because this is a study of female sexuality, and so that's where I'll begin. To me, female sexuality is the very essence of being a woman in body. Yeah? And it is connected to our body as women, to every part of us that makes us a feminine gender. Our breasts, our menstrual blood, the genitals, the womb, the ability that women have to create, sustain life. That is what is, for me, that is what is the very essence of female sexuality. And why is that the foundation of my work? Because I feel that how that relationship is blossomed in a girl, you know, from a girl to being a woman, that defines and shows up in every aspect of a relationship, as mother, as daughter, as wife, as sister, as lover, as a friend, in every aspect. And that is the whole premise of my study. And why this study is because in my own life, my own relationship with body and sexuality was defined by my education, by the books I read, by the media, the television, the movies I watched, by hearsay of friends. Yeah, like you read some novel, you share with each other, this is what. That defined my relationship to a great extent. And I valued my head more than my own body and the wisdom that came from my body and from my sexuality. And this created a disconnect between me and my body. And everything associated with my body resulted, for me, was shameful. If you want to talk about it, was not important enough, was not meaningful enough. And because of this, it also got me disconnected from my own roots. Because in the culture that I come from, it's very matriarchal, matrilineal. It celebrates the erotic sexuality of women. It was considered as sacred and connected to the lineage. And so I saw these rituals growing up as very primitive, backward. I didn't want to do anything with them. And that disconnect in my relationship is what I explored through this research. And so now you're wondering who the Neiers are, so I'm going to go very brief. Neiers were a matrilineal, matrilocal warrior clan from Kerala. Kerala is a southwestern province of India, and patriarchal marriages as we know today did not exist. Actually, marriages as we know today did not exist in the Nayar community, and institutionalization of husband or father did not exist in the system. Women and men never left their homes after marriage. Their responsibilities went to their natural kin, you know, their maternal kin. And land belonged to the women, and children born through these unions belonged to the mother's house, the mother's maternal family. And did I grow up in that? And the birth of a daughter was celebrated, yeah? And her femininity was directly connected to the prosperity, and hence there was a lot of emphasis made on, made that she blossomed into a very beautiful, you know, mature, sexually mature woman. And was I born into that, Nayar? No, I wasn't. In the last 40 to 50 years, Kerala has changed drastically. The matriarchal system doesn't exist anymore, though you can still feel the love for the mother. Like my dad and my mom, they both love their families and they have the freedom to go and meet and be with their families. And this is the most shocking reality of Kerala today. Though it's the most literate state of India, where women are educated, most women work, it is number one in domestic violence. It has the highest rates of women's suicides. And there's a lot of abuse and rape that's happening in Kerala today. And funnily, nobody ever speaks about the matrilineal past when they're talking about solutions, when you see a talk show. It's kind of like a shameful past of Kerala somehow. It's become that there were no marriages, and like women had the freedom of being with any man, and she could call up a relationship if she didn't like it. And somehow those values are not viewed in an overly patriarchal Kerala today as something which we are proud of. And also the younger generation is fast embracing a modern viewpoint of perception of sexuality, which is overly objectifying of the body. And this again is causing a lot of issues in Kerala right now. And in this premise is when I did my study. And the main reason for my study was not just for myself, but also that I wanted daughters around the world to rise up and go back and find out what is the story of my ancestry. How was my mother's life, my grandmother's life, my great-grandmother's life different from mine? And what changed? There are different values might have changed, but just even asking that question. So what did I do for this research study? I went to Kerala last year. I interviewed my mom, and I interviewed 3 grandmothers from my near and extended family. So these grandmothers were 80 to 90 years old, and many of these grandmothers lived in that system. And they had mothers who were actually born in that system. And they knew a Kerala which I never knew existed. I have no memories of it. My mother has no memories of it. And I met them, I spent time with these grandmothers, and the most beautiful part of spending time with them was these grandmothers were with their daughters and their grandchildren in these interviews. And nobody had ever asked their grandmother these questions. And these granddaughters were there watching this girl who has come back from the United States and was doing a master's, has come all the way to interview my grandmother who doesn't even speak English, and what does my grandmother have? So it was a huge experience to be in a room with all these women. All our setting had all women, and it was really very reinforcing for me as well. And this was what I asked them. I asked them about how was their relationship with body and sexuality, and how did that blossom? What rituals from the culture facilitated that blossoming? And okay, I have pictures of, that's me and my mom. I just wanted to show you my, and those are the grandmothers. So you could see each grandmother in the picture. And that grandmother over there, where you see the name Meenakshi, she has a great grandkids. So she has like a whole generation with them. And these are women who are 80, 90, you meet them, you don't think they are that old. They are very active, they do everything in the house, and we were at some ceremonies, we were up, like I was asleep midnight and they were like up all night. We were as active as before, even 4 in the morning, and we were like, all of the youngsters were like falling asleep. What did I learn? I mean, it's very difficult to define what I learned because it's both an experience and it's such a huge part of me, but there's some things which are very concrete. I got to really hear from each grandmother the rituals which they experience in their life, how when rituals around puberty, when they had their first blood, what was the whole ceremony that they went through. And it was so positive and reinforcing, and I never experienced that in my life. I did not even really know that these ceremonies existed in my grandmother's time. And there were many other festivals which is very bizarre. Like in all of India, it's only in Kerala that the lot of passion and lust is really celebrated, and women celebrate and worship. And they, it's said it's like a transfer of wisdom from the law, from the god of passion to the women. And attire, there's some very ancient, actually it's not ancient because my grandmothers wore it, some things which really strengthen the hip and the womb of women. And stories, of course. And this is the most important one, that I got to look at my own life and redefine it. You know, things that I was shameful about, I could reclaim it in a different way. And these are some very interesting things which I wanted to just share so that you can see the difference. In my grandmother's time, her menarche ritual was the most memorable event of her life. Marriage, she doesn't remember. And in my generation, my marriage is the most defining ritual of my life. I didn't have a ritual around menarche. And also, most of these grandmothers, they lived in their home even after marriage. They never left their home. They lived there, they had the whole support of their sisters, brothers, uncles, their daughters. Some of them still have all their daughters and children, they're all living together in the same land. And that was very, very beautiful. And they had the freedom to, if they were in a marriage and they didn't like it, they had the freedom to walk out the very same day back to their house and welcomed. This is not happening in Kerala today because domestic violence is so high and women don't leave because it's seen as shameful to come back. And that's a huge shift that's happened in Kerala. And this is another thing. Most of these grandmothers, they were very comfortable with nudity. They swam naked. Most homes in Kerala, they had huge pools, huge ponds that were made, and women swam. They swam with all their friends in the morning, and men were on the other side. There was no shame. They were very comfortable in their bodies, which was not, I cannot say the same for my generation. Though we were very modern, we wore short skirts and all that stuff, but we still had a sense of shame in our bodies that my mother and grandmothers never had. They just said, like, if you ask them, I asked them, like, didn't you feel shame when you were getting into this, the pond to bathe? They were like, what is there to feel shame? I'm just taking off clothes and putting soap on. So I'm like, I kept trying to tell them, ask them about shame, because in Malayalam language, the word for shame and shyness is the same. So though I was asking them about shame, they just could not understand what am I asking. And it was very interesting to see that difference. And what am I going to do next? That's the most important. I'm going back to India. I'm going back to India in 2 weeks. I've been in the United States for 14 years, and I love this land. It has given me so many gifts. Like I didn't think I would tear up here. That's beautiful. Like midnight when I sit at a cafe and I work, and I don't think about going back home alone, and have no fear around that. I take it so much for granted. I know when I go back to India, I won't be able to do that. So that's really beautiful. And I will publish my recent book, and hopefully it will be out for purchase by October 12th, my birthday this year. And I want to expand the scope of my interviews to include more grandmothers, not just in Kerala, but across the land of India. And if I finish that in this life, I would like to expand that across other countries, because I feel that grandmothers all over the world, they kind of have a similar story to tell. And this is another thing I would like to do, is create socially active matriarchal platforms in Kerala that could pass on these memories of grandmothers to generations to come, because right now the younger generation has no clue that their grandmothers are sitting on such wealth, such a precious past. And I hope I could do that. And I want to create dialogues between men and women around matrilineal cultures and matriarchal cultures, and here I would like to make just one note that whenever I say matriarchal, I always get people think that matriarchal means where women were dominating men or women were in control. But matriarchal cultures did not have that aspect. Matriarchal, I learned this through my thesis, that the word arche has two meanings. And that's where I'm going to end my presentation. Arche means both from the beginning and dominance. And when it's matriarchy, it actually meant mother from the beginning. And these cultures honored motherhood, life was centered around that concept of motherhood community. And everybody has a mother, whether a man or a woman. That's something that connects everybody on this planet is motherhood. Yeah, mother. We are all connected to our mothers. And when matriarchy kind of shifted to patriarchy, it became, I will just leave it there. It became whatever it became that we see today. And
we're not going to go into that.
I'm very grateful for this opportunity to share my work with all of you, and thank you so much, everyone.